Self and Scott Drew. So, tonight, West Virginia at Baylor on ESPN2. UT plays in Lubbock against Tech. 8 o'clock, Tech just beat Kansas State. That game tonight with Tech and UT is at ESPN. Boy, how a difference a year makes compared to last year when Tech was able to win both home and away. The top 25 came out, and here's a question I have. Now, Alabama wins and they beat Auburn. They're number one for the first time in some 20 years. That's fine. They were on the edge of being number one. But they did just get blown out a week and a half ago by Oklahoma by 30.
Yeah, I do think, though, that everybody's going to have a game like that. I mean, about 30. I mean, that's pretty bad. But everybody's going to have a game or two during the season, no matter how elite you are, then you're like, what is going on? Look, even for Gonzaga, 2 years ago, it was the last two games they played against UCLA and Baylor, one where they barely got out and one that they got throttled. But everybody's going to have those.
Baylor got beat up by Kansas on the road. Remember that game, the year they won the national title. But by 30 to Oklahoma, that goes to show you the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde of some of the teams in the Big 12.
Well, and not to say that Alabama is, not elite, like you said, Smokey, but I do think that Oklahoma was well used to playing teams like that and needed a win like that, and just kind of all came together at once. But yeah, I don't think it's really indicative of Alabama as a whole and what Nate Oates has going on there.
Yeah, and again, West Virginia, don't think because and Texas did smoke them this weekend, beat them badly, almost got to 100. That probably means West Virginia comes in with their hair on fire, and they always are going to give it all they have. The question is, do they have enough oomph? In the Big 12, you just don't know. You just don't know. Houston, number 2. Kansas and Texas, 5 and 6 in the AP. Kansas is 7th in the coaches poll. Texas is 5th. Baylor 9th in both. Kansas State, Iowa State, and TCU are all ranked as well in the top 25 this week.
Is that a pull for Pac-12 schools? I would think for Arizona probably, yeah.
The Big 12 in basketball?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Arizona would be a great addition to already a great conference.
I mean, to help at least replace Oklahoma and Texas. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of, basketball doesn't matter. Basketball doesn't matter. I don't know. I think men's basketball matters. And I don't think in the early talks about conference realignment it was given nearly enough credit. I understand it's not the cash cow that football is, but it's the only other cash cow in the entire structure of this thing is men's basketball.
Especially if that new contract, when it comes up, is going to explode to numbers that we never thought we'd see.
Well, Brett Yormark adding, throwing Gonzaga out in there about increasing the value of basketball is not a now thing. That's a later thing.
Right.
Because look, and he worked in the NBA with the Nets. He knows the draw of basketball.
It's clearly the number 2 sport in America right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you have the number 2 sport in America, and what the NCAA has not done a great job of doing is the second most popular watch sport would be college football. They have not leaned into that hard enough to make it better and fix that. And then if number 3 is the NBA, then number 4 would probably be college basketball, especially in 1 month of a year where you have kind of a captive audience who looks forward to it and marks it down. Well, how do you increase the value of that? It's not what I think the NCAA is trying to make the mistake of expanding the tournament to 96 teams or whatever they want to do. It is expanding the value of the regular season because the tournament is already almost as valuable and as perfect as it can be. They're thinking wrong in that, we need to make the tournament better. No, you need to make the regular season better so that on those Wednesday nights in December, early in the year in football season, people will say, you know what, there's no football game on tonight, but heck, Gonzaga's playing Houston, and those are 2 damn good teams.
By the way,
I want to watch that.
Arizona and 365 Sports on the chat room, 20% of revenue and units from the tournament. Everybody you can get in the tournament that keeps winning, you get a unit. Arizona is usually going to win a lot. Houston's going to win. And then, of course, you do lose Texas and then Oklahoma, who's been up and down when it comes to basketball. So adding Arizona, no doubt, adding Arizona, if in fact that was to happen, the value would be there for the Big 12 and men's basketball, not just whatever they might bring when it comes to football.
Yeah, and to be clear, I mean, I definitely feel like there are things in the works, but I just feel like the Pac's going to hold on as tight as long as it possibly can. And, it sounds like easy to just, Arizona they want to leave, and let's just go ahead and add them. And, hey, it'd be great to grab this team and that team. But I understand right now everybody's got to put on the same brave face because they're in the conference until they're not. And I think there probably is some of that going on. And obviously that statement doesn't look all that great. But, I'm very curious to see what Brett Yormark's full plans are. And if he is attempting to take a bite out of the Pac, what does that look like, and how does Gonzaga fit into that big picture, and just these 5-10 year plans that he's got in the works, as aggressive as he's being and all of that. I'm fascinated to see what chess moves are next, and right now it feels like the Big 12 is playing with a bit more of a chessboard, and the Pac-12 has broken out the checkers, but we'll see. I mean, until that TV deal is announced, it's anybody's guess, but I don't blame anybody for taking that statement today and feeling like it's just another, last breath for the Pac, but I'm not ready to go there just yet.
The other thing you got to consider for all the teams in the Pac, look, they're, not that USC and UCLA have been a decade-long impediment to you winning that league, because they haven't, and UCLA hasn't won it since the mid-90s. But losing that, and you have two less teams in there, especially – if they're teams you don't regularly beat, I can just tell you from covering Baylor and Baylor's perspective, they got a lot better when A&M and Nebraska left. They didn't beat A&M and Nebraska hardly ever. So I don't know if they ever beat Nebraska, but they beat A&M 2 times.
They had never beaten Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And they had never beaten Nebraska.
Yeah.
Now, that would have changed because of who they were the last 10 years compared to the Huskers.
But when Nebraska left, and that was a team they hadn't beaten, and then, of course, Nebraska leaving is what maybe started their, demise to where they are now. They've probably been still fairly relevant and beating teams and being bowl games in the Big 12, but they left. Okay, that's a team that's going to be replaced that you don't necessarily lose to all the time. And then A&M in my lifetime has only lost to Baylor, I think 3 times and tied once. So that's not a great run that they had against A&M. A&M left, and all of a sudden you don't have a team you're perennially stuck in the mud against, and then you win. So if you're Colorado or Arizona, you may not have to really fear them when it comes to them winning the league. But if it's a team that beats you more than you beat them and you don't have to play them anymore, things are going to get easier for you just naturally to win the conference and get in the top 12. We're talking about not top 4 now. We're talking about in a year, we're talking about the top 12. So strategies have to change around that. Now, does this mean the Pac-12 is ever going to be rock solid? No, but I do think that that's a huge consideration as well, is what sets you up the best to be in the top 12.
Yeah, I'm at a place where I would not be surprised to see some teams jump ship, however that works. I also could foresee culturally everybody wanting to stick together and get through this streaming deal and then see where they are in a few years when this all opens back up again, right, with the ACC and whatever ends up happening there, and what could, like the Big 12's deal, everybody's syncing it back up, right? And so we're going to do this, we're going to have a revisiting of the contracts all about the same time, here later on in this decade. Maybe they can eke it out until then, and the expanded playoff allows them to do that, although, how they're viewed would be very much a mystery. But, I think it was our buddy Tim Fitzgerald, who covers K-State, was asking about the culture, or was talking about the cultural piece to this. And that's the part that's keeping me from thinking that this is all just going to burn down overnight, is that cultural piece. But I do question, and I'm sure that folks at Arizona or Arizona State question too, hey, Cal, how invested and serious are you about this? Hey, Stanford, how invested and serious are you about this? Because we're wanting to play big-time Division I college football and college basketball still and be competitive at the highest levels. Is that in y'all's plans too? Or are we just going to be the let's brag about academics conference? Let's brag about the West Coast Culture Conference, because there is a diverging moment coming up here, and there's a fork in the road that, I'm sure that all 10 of those schools are going to have to, one by one make a decision on. And I think that it's very clear that probably your Cals are going one direction, but what direction do the Arizona schools want to go? And I think that's kind of, if you had to lean a certain way, you probably could see the opening there for the Big 12, but there's there's those others, those Colorados, those Utahs. What about them? That's what I'm not quite sure on just yet.
Rod Webb, by the way, who follows a lot of this realignment, has shared things with me just in case we didn't see it. Smokey, the pro rata clause in the ESPN new contract for Power 5 teams has been reported widely. Fox is the question. That said, the current Fox contract has the pro rata clause in it. I know that I'm sure there would be a bump, but would it be a bump that's equal to anyone making the same amount of money or some conferences making more money? That's to add would, to me, unless you think you're going to, be in some sort of a turf war, which is possibly what we're seeing. I get that. But if you add, let's say 2 teams, I don't care who they are, 2 teams, and everyone's going to get the same amount of money, is that worth it? You're gonna still get that 30, whatever, 40, whatever that number is.
Well, we're sitting here talking about the Pac-12, and speaking of adding 2 teams, just last week the story was them trying to add San Diego State and SMU, so they're clearly not trying to just go down without any type of a fight, and they're not trying to just fold up shop and say, well, Stanford and Cal are going to go play school, and everybody else is going to go join the Big 12 or whatever is in mind. I think that they're clearly trying to make efforts, but SMU was a school. And I don't know how much y'all talked about this last week because I didn't hear every single moment, but that was a school that when the first Big 12 go-round was going on, that your little insider was saying, like, that's a school that a lot of people look at that were speculating on expansion going like, that could be a sleeping giant right there. That could be. They've got big money. We just don't know it because they had to tuck it away for so long due to the death penalty. But now in this era, like, they were built for that. That's when they last thrived, was when it was basically – treating it like there was no limitations. I think that the Dallas thing gets overrated quite a bit, but yeah, I mean, just last week they were trying to add teams. This week they're trying to reassure folks. So who the heck knows where the Pac-12 actually is in this, but it's not the spot you want to be in right now, and just how dire it is, that's what we're all trying to figure out.
One of the comments was why one of our listeners, viewers, one of the reasons why the Four Corner schools would be interested in the Big 12 is because they also know, and I'm not saying this is true, but it's opinion, that Washington and Oregon can leave at any time. If they were invited, of course, if anyone is invited to join either the Big Ten or the SEC, they're gone. There's not even you don't even have to call anybody else, right?
The 10 Big 12 schools sticking together would jump at a moment's notice. If Kansas got the Big Ten call, see ya. I mean, if any of them did. So, yeah, I mean, I understand the motivation for why. I just don't know how much of a want to there is outside of what we just read on Twitter. If that makes sense.
Yeah, when we come back, more to get to.